Because AI is so heavily involved in cryptocurrency, right? And helping structure literally the networks and the blockchain guys, the SEC now has to address AI and financial services, right? But what is the issue? Okay. And here we have Hillary Allen, where she is addressing, right, compromising issues. Now, this is not in detail, but Hillary still does a very good job of explaining what are the concerns of the SEC, right, by adopting cryptocurrency on a global scale. Y'all just pay attention and listen. Listen more than anything, okay? Don't just watch. I want you to listen to what the concerns are, okay? Pay attention.
Side or what have you.
Yeah, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about sort of the impact on institutional usage for investors, because I think, a lot of what I'm hearing from the panel is that we're expecting cost savings through particularly operational efficiencies that hopefully will then be passed on to investors, making it more easy for them to invest at cheaper prices. And that's been the pitch behind a lot of sort of machine learning based portfolio management tools, for example, that instead of having to sort of pay a human to construct things for you, it can be sort of outsourced to an algorithm. And there are potentially some cost savings there. A couple of things to watch out for, though, as well. One is that, we've talked about sort of training these algorithms as if it's sort of a passive process, and it's really not. The people who are training these algorithms have lots of points for intervention, whether that's in the data curation stage or tuning the algorithm itself. And so we need to be wary of the fact that these sort of black boxes, in many respects, can be tuned in a way that perpetuates the problems that we see in traditional conflicts of interest in the provision of financial advice or brokers, dealers, etc. So I think, to the point earlier about defining AI, I'm all for the, future-proofing regulation. Don't tie it to a particular technology that's going to be obsolete. But these are long-standing concerns about conflicts of interest, and we need to be clear that the AI is not going to eliminate them. So there may be some cost savings in terms of portfolio construction, but what are the trade-offs there in terms of lack of clarity about how conflicts of interest are actually being sort of filtered through the model? Another thing I want to note about sort of the operational efficiencies that we're hearing about in the context of, say, back office is cheaper because they're using Gen AI for summarization and things like that. I think we need to be very cognizant of the fact that we're in the blitz scaling phase of Gen AI. And if you're not familiar with that, that's sort of the venture capital term for making things available at very low subsidized cost to encourage adoption. And then once adoption has been encouraged, that's when the price goes back up. And really, no one knows how much it actually costs the big Gen AI providers to operate their models and respond to queries. So we don't actually know what that cost is going to look like, but currently it seems like they're all losing money on every single prompt they respond to. So when they start needing to make money, those prices are going to be increased significantly. And so I just want to be a little wary of the fact that we're expecting these operational efficiencies to filter down to investors, but in fact use of Gen AI could get a whole lot more expensive, perhaps more expensive even than having a human. And what does that mean for business models and the end flow-on costs for investors? In terms of actual Gen AI interactions between investors and institutions, the obvious sort of use case here is, and some financial firms have tried it, is the chatbot basically as a replacement of customer service. Now, the problem here is the hallucination problem. The research indicates that hallucinations will never be eliminated in any significant way. So you're basically, as an institution, trying to decide whether to use chatbots or not, having to make a cost-benefit analysis. How comfortable am I with the fact that I can't predict what the chatbot will say, and it could quite conceivably be wrong? Air Canada got into trouble with this. It had a chatbot misrepresent its policies. Air Canada tried to say it wasn't us, it was the chatbot. The Canadian tribunal said, nice try. And so I think there's been some wariness in using these in financial services where the stakes are so high with money. And then also there's just the fact that people hate chatbots. So Klarna, with the buy now, pay later company, went all in on having sort of Gen AI as its customer service. And then I thought it was very sweet. On Valentine's this year, it sent a love letter to humanity saying, we goofed. Actually, people want to interface with real humans, and we're going to work on that. So I guess there are potentially some cost efficiencies that can help out investors in the long run, but they come with a lot of risks. I didn't even get into my hobby horse, which I think will be dealt with later, which is basically the systemic risks that come from having more and more decisions made by the same kind of algorithms based on the same kind of data. And even though there are hopes to create more data, so we have basically, all right, I said I wasn't going to get into it, I'm clearly doing it. We really only have one timeline for the market. That's not a big data situation, to think about how different market institutions and prices interact. So we really don't have big data. There's a lot of interest in creating new data, synthetic data with Gen AI, but that's really just an echo chamber because that data you're creating is based on data you already had. So I think there are systemic risks, but I'm going to try and stick to the investor protection beat today and say that a lot of the efficiencies come with trade-offs.
Okay, great.